Hey everybody, welcome back to, well, it's a special one. This is the 100th episode of the Daron Earlewine Podcast. Yes, I just said 100. It's huge. Fireworks going off. We've got a whole pyrotechnic thing that's going to happen later. We've had to fireproof the whole studio. It's going to be amazing. Get ready for it. If you are sensitive to laser lights and or strobe lights, you shouldn't watch this episode. It's about to get... I'm just kidding. None of that's going to happen. But it is the 100th episode of the Daron Earlewine Podcast, and it's kind of crazy. You wake up every day, and you do something week in and week out, and eventually you get to some pretty cool landmark moments like the 100th episode. And so we're going to take a break right now in the chapter-by-chapter walkthrough of my book, The Death of a Dream, and just take a look back and then look a little bit forward into the future of this podcast and of what's going on. Here's what I hope it does for you as you listen to this episode is maybe you don't produce a podcast, maybe you didn't write a book, but you have something that you're pursuing. You have goals in your life. You have things that as you look out into your horizon, you think, man, I can't even imagine getting to that place. Or what would it be like to stay faithful to something that long? For you, maybe it's a diet plan. Maybe like you just started, dieting and you just started a new way you're going to try to eat. Maybe it's something you just figured out you're, have gluten intolerance or something. And you're like, man, now I've got to change the way I eat. Maybe for you, it's a drug or alcohol situation. And you're like, man, I can't even fathom what it would be like to be sober for 10 years. Maybe for you, it's some other kind of addiction or habit, something you want to change. And you're just thinking out there, I can't imagine what it'd be like for my kids to be 10 years old or to be 100 days into this marriage. Maybe you just got married. I don't know what the situation is, but there's something in your life where a goal out there just seems a little bit too far. Like, man, we'll never get there. Well, here's what I want to do. I want to look into, like I said, look in the rearview mirror a little bit about 100 episodes of this podcast. Some of you out there have listened to all 100 episodes. You're the diehards. You're the OGs. You're awesome. I thank you for that. But also just what are some things I've learned through this process that maybe can help you in where you're going and accomplishing the dreams God's put in your heart? So let's talk about it. This is the 100th episode, but here's the crazy thing is we've been actually podcasting for a long time. And I didn't go back and look. I probably should have looked of all the different names of all the different podcasts that literally I've been doing. I think I started podcasting somewhere around 2010, maybe. With the first podcast was the Pub Theology podcast. We started it. It was myself and Dave Smiley from the Smiley Morning Show here in Indianapolis and our good buddy Joey V. We started this thing, the Pub Theology podcast. We had just started Pub Theology. I was doing some stuff with Dave Smiley, and we said, hey, we want to do this podcast, and we'll just talk about life and stuff and work some faith elements into it, kind of the format of what we would do at a Pub Theology event. And it was such a freaking cool deal because if you're here in Indy, you know Smiley. If you're not here in Indy, you don't know Dave. But very successful, popular morning DJ here in town, and grew up as a pastor's kid. And I would say Dave absolutely believes that Jesus is the Son of God, and his relationship with the Lord is evolving. We'll say that. But one of the coolest things, Dave's been an amazing friend to me for a long time, for over a decade now. And the cool part is that when we asked Dave to be a part of it, he got really stoked. In fact, he went and bought some new gear for his home studio, some mics and a new mixing board, and did some stuff to kind of make sure we had good equipment. And we would set it up there in Dave's house, and it was just this awesome time of just kind of organically trying this thing of podcasting. At that point, podcasting wasn't brand new, but it was fairly new. Not a lot of people were doing it, and so we did that podcast for years. And what's crazy is there's a chapter in my book, right, called "Woven, Not Wasted," and this whole concept that as we look into the rearview mirrors, as we're going through life, seeing that something that happened for maybe a season and it didn't become what we thought maybe it was going to become, whether that's a career, relationship, whatever it may be. It's like, oh, that time was just wasted. And God, why would you let me do that if it wasn't going to become, my career or my total part of my dream? And what I think about is how that very beginning Pub Theology podcast, and I don't even know if you can still find it online somewhere. Maybe you can, maybe on our feed still, if you keep, scrolling back, I don't know. But that started something that it probably was a lot of those sessions that actually allowed me to continue to develop my ability to host and to have the conversations that actually helped Pub Theology, that helped my speaking. But then some of that with my work with Dave, with Smiley, ended up being what paved the way for me to come on his radio show. And that allowing me to come on his radio show led to a 3.5-year radio show of my own called Radio Theology, right? All that started back from just saying, you know what? Let's see if we can't use some of our gifts and abilities and make a difference in people's lives. And so there was the Pub Theology podcast. And after that happened, we shifted it a little bit once I started doing the radio show, and we had the Born to Be podcast. And many of you may have listened to the Born to Be podcast. And, same kind of format and heart behind what we do now, interviewing people, talking about finding your calling on life. Ooh, excuse me. I need some more coffee. And we did that for a couple of years. And then as Radio Theology took off, we changed the format of the podcast again and did a lot of the highlights and deeper dive stuff that we were doing with the radio show. And that was really cool. And some of you are a part of that. And then 2020 happens. And sadly enough, I think a lot of our lives are going to go back. There's going to be some kind of story we tell where it's like I was doing X, Y, and Z, and then 2020 happened. And in 2020, right, the radio show in one day was gone. Even the ability for us to do Pub Theology, our ministry that we do out in local bars here in Indianapolis, was gone. And that summer was a major pivot for me personally, was a major pivot for us as a ministry. And we said, you know what, listen, we've got to find a way to stay connected to this audience, this community that we've developed through all these podcasts, through this radio show. And what are we going to do now that we have to change this format again? And, through some conversations with our team and our board and with God, realize that, maybe we need to stop calling the podcast something other than just the Daron Earlewine podcast, because everything else seems to get canceled or die in some way. And the Daron Earlewine podcast can continue until Daron Earlewine's not doing it anymore. Daron Earlewine's dead. And so we made that change, and it was kind of interesting. Because, we had been doing podcasting for all these years, and then here it is. Now we're back to episode 1 of this podcast in this format, and not really sure how it would go. It felt really weird to me. I'd been doing, Radio Theology for 3.5 years with Ryan and Lisa, and it was we had this whole team vibe, and we'd really figured out our lanes and the way that we worked and vibed with each other on the air and in the podcast. And it was like, okay, now it's just me talking to you. And that was a step of faith. And, I think some of those times, if you get to that point where maybe you've got something where you've started over, you're right now at episode 1, day 1, focus 1 of whatever it is, to offer yourself some compassion for the emotions you may feel, the fear you may feel. But then don't let fear be the thing that stops you from moving forward. Sometimes you just got to start. And so we did. We just started with episode 1 and started connecting with people that I thought would be interesting and inspiring for you to listen to. And I look back, over those first couple episodes. I remember we had Davey Blackburn in here and some powerful stuff we did with Davey. We had one of my buddies and mentors, Charlie Alcock, was with us, I think, that first year. Josh Kaufman, the winner of The Voice, one of my favorite old school episodes. If you've not gone back and listened to Kaufman's episode, in fact, we got to have Josh Kaufman back on. He tells a story about coming back to his faith, and it was just so, I didn't even know we were going there. And before you know it, we were there. Phenomenal conversation. I'd love to get Josh back because I know this is something he's continued in his pursuit of growing his relationship with Jesus. And so Kaufman, we had Mike Breen, had my dad on in the first 100 episodes. And here's one of the reasons. I was just talking to a buddy last night about this. And, as you get older, you realize that life is really short. And I love my dad's story, and it's inspiring to me. And there was decisions and sacrifices that my dad made that completely and dramatically, and I think eternally, changed our family tree. And I wanted to honor my dad's story, being one of the first Christians in his family, and responding to a call to ministry, and raising, my brother and I in a strong Christian home, and seeing how that's now going to the next generation of our family. And none of that was guaranteed. And so I wanted to honor my dad in that. And also, there was a part of it where one of my best friends had lost his mom to COVID. And shortly before she passed, she left a voicemail on his phone, and he saved that voicemail because he always wanted to have the ability to hear his mom's voice, even though she was gone. And right after that happened, I thought, you know what? I'm going to get my dad on the podcast because I want to tell his story. I want to be able to honor the life that he's given me to live, and I want forever to be able to have a audio and visual recording of my dad and I talking, and man, all that's in those first 100 episodes, and it's been so awesome. There's so many of you have joined us in a part of the growing community that's a part of the Daron Earlewine Podcast. It's an absolute honor that I get to be a part of your day in whatever way, shape, or form you consume this podcast, whether you listen to it, whether you watch it on YouTube, whether you're mowing the lawn, working out, having a cup of coffee, taking me on a road trip. It's truly an honor to be able to be in your space. And it's something I learned was I was doing radio for 3.5 years is this is such an intimate connection. And I want you to know that I don't take it lightly, is that most of the time, right, you don't listen to podcasts in a group. And so when you're listening, it's just you and me. And so whether I get to ride shotgun in your car with you, or I get to go on a walk around the neighborhood with you and your dog, I know that this is a pretty intimate space. And I just want to say thanks for trusting me to be a part of this part of your life. And I hope it's impacting you in positive ways. Second thought I thought about was I was thinking about this 100th episode is the importance of just to be faithful. I think in whatever thing you have going on in your life, you're at episode 1 of whatever it is. You just got married. Like I said, you're working towards being clean. You're working towards following Jesus. And it's like you're meeting people and you're like, man, I just started following Jesus. And I read this amazing book called The Death of a Dream. And I came to faith. And maybe I'm just making things up. Right. And I just can't imagine being able to be the kind of mature Christian that my dad was, or the guy that led me to Christ, or the woman that led me to Christ was. I just can't. My imagination, right, is not allowing me to understand what it would be like to be at the 100th step of that. Here's what I want to encourage you with. You just got to be faithful. Here's a thought I had as I was writing this down today is oftentimes faithfulness itself is success. Oftentimes faithfulness itself is success. A lot of times we love the epic story or the fairy tale of the overnight success. The reality is that the more people I meet, is you may have heard about them last night, right? And so overnight you heard about their success, but the truth was their success was made in 20 years of faithfulness. And I'll say this to you as well, is I've thought about this often actually in my dad's journey in ministry. And maybe it's for you in business or for something else, is like my dad never led a church that, grew by leaps and bounds and, doubled it was the fastest growing church in whatever state. And, he never had some mega church that he led. And so you could look back and be like, well, your dad wasn't very quote unquote successful in ministry. But the reality is, and what I've seen in life is, he was, because he was faithful. He was faithful to show up every day and to love people and to be there for the good times and the bad times. He was there for myself and my brother. He's been loyal. He's been faithful. And there may be something in your life you're saying, man, Daron, I'm just not seeing the massive success. And I'll tell you what, there's times, guys, when I look at the downloads for our podcast and I'm like, wow, we're 100 episodes in and we've been doing this like pretty soon, right? We're going to have like 70, 80,000 downloads, a month. And if we got to that level of success and people wanted to start advertising on our podcast and producer Coop and I could, go to the Bahamas, listen, I'm in. All right. Contact us. We will let you sponsor the podcast and we will go to the Bahamas. That hasn't happened yet. So are we not successful because we don't have 70,000 downloads a month? No. For me, we're successful because we're faithful. And not only that, for me, there's a part of it where to stay faithful, you got to be clear on your why. And for me, I don't do this podcast for notoriety. I don't do this podcast every week so I can grow it to 70,000 people and go on vacation to the Bahamas. Although, once again, I'm great with 70,000 people if you want to listen, and I will definitely go to the Bahamas on the money we make from that. But we'll tithe, we'll give away some money, but I'm just saying. But the deal is this. I do this podcast every week because I believe in awakening you to become who you're born to be. And so when we check the stats, it's like, oh, I think downloads are really growing. This month, downloads were down. Like, am I human enough to get caught up in the ups and downs of those emotions? Yes. But we've got to episode 100 because it's not about the successful accolades or the vanity metrics of things. It's about that I do this for my why, because I feel like God's called me to awaken people to become what they're born to be. And this is a great medium to walk with you in your life and see that happen. So whatever it is for you, if you're saying, man, I don't feel like I'm seeing the results that I want, or don't feel like I'm as successful as I want to be, I want to encourage you to stay faithful. Stay faithful. Here's another thing. On this faithfulness journey, I want to encourage you on this one, is to mark your progress. Pay attention and mark your progress in the journey. Here's a quick illustration of this. This was funny this week, and my 16-year-old son, Ty, he's been growing like crazy, and now he's the tallest person in our house, and he wants everybody to know that that's the case. He's probably right about 6'2", which is crazy because like nobody named Earlewine has been over 6 foot, like, I don't know, ever. And so he's the tallest in the family. And, he's plays football and baseball. He's been in the gym. He's following the footsteps of his older brother, disciplined in the gym, eating right, got protein shakes and peanut butter and everything. Right. And the other day he took a picture of himself in the weight room, and he was like, Dad, and this was hilarious. He's like, Dad, take a look at this picture, right? He's like, I really like how the lights and like in it. I'm his dad, so I'm being on but it was pretty impressive. I mean, the bicep was looking nice. I mean, the progress was there, right? Shoulders, but I was like, all right, bro. Well, I mean, that's looking good, dude. And he said, Dad, the crazy part, he's like, I'm glad I started taking these progress pictures, because he says, when I was a freshman last year, is like when I first started lifting, he's like, I don't know that I've noticed, if I wouldn't be taking pictures, I wouldn't notice the impact. I wouldn't notice the growth, because he's like, I guess I feel like I kind of always looked like this. He's like, then I go back and look at my first pictures of my freshman year, and he's like, what in the world? Who is that guy? And we were talked about it. I said, here's the deal about it. It's like, it's tough to see your growth when you're not taking pictures and marking it, because every day you wake up and you're just you again. But it's when you can look back and mark, okay, yeah, today this is who I am, but now I can see where I was there. And I don't know what that looks like for you on a spiritual, mental, emotional journey. One thing that I think really helps is journaling. A discipline that you can take where you're actually in a way, like he's able to take physical growth, right? He's taking snapshots of his body. You can do the same thing. That it actually works. You know what I mean? If you're trying to lose weight, or you're gaining weight, or you're working out, you know what I mean? Mark your progress. Take a picture every week. See how it goes. But I found that journaling regularly is a way for you to take snapshots of your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. I love to go back. I have a 5-year journal that I keep. I'd suggest you check that out. I got that from another pastor friend of mine. I've had it now. I'm on the 4th year of it. And so every day I can go back, and if I'm faithful in my journaling, I can see, wow, here's what was going on 4 years ago. And here's the way I was interacting with that. And here's the way I was praying about that. And as I mark my growth, it's amazing the impact that it can actually make, where you can see, okay, wow, you know what? I am on episode 100, and there's growth in the faithfulness. Other thought is this, and this is hot off the press for us. The next thought is, as you're walking through this journey towards your 100th whatever, is I want you to believe more than you believe right now in the goodness of your Heavenly Father. Coop and I were just talking before we started recording today about yesterday. We're coming off the heels of Giving Tuesday, a global day of generosity. We told you guys about it, invited you to join us in generosity, and oh my goodness. We're talking about, we think this is our 4th year of doing Giving Tuesday. And through your generosity and many other people around the country, over $80,000 was donated to Blackbird Mission yesterday. And we feel so overwhelmed in gratitude and now expectation of like, wow, God, if you entrusted us with these kinds of resources, we have to make sure that we are faithful. We have to make sure that we're pursuing. We have to make sure that we're focused and doing what you've called us to do because you've entrusted us with great responsibility. And I feel so indebted to that. But last night I was sitting with two of our board members and talking about it and talking about being parents and how we see our sons. And I said, man, guys, can you imagine? Actually, it wasn't me. It was one of our board members said, man, can you imagine how God saw today, Daron, as you as his son? He's like, think about if your son was trying to accomplish a goal for something he was doing and you were able to bless him with the ability to accomplish the goal. He was like, at the end of the day, he's like, as a father, how full of pride and joy would you be to go like I told you, son, I was going to help you do this. Like, I'm so happy that you're happy. Like, I'm so overwhelmed with joy that you can receive this and let me be a part of it. And that's the truth. I was kind of getting teary thinking about it. But here's what I had to push myself on is as today was yesterday was happening and we kept getting more generous gifts from people is, and this is me still figuring out my head trash with God, and I'm the podcast pastor guy. I still have all this head trash of like, man, I'm not sure. Is God okay blessing us this much? Like, I have this image of like God kind of being like, oh gosh, I guess I'll be cool with Earlewine today. You know what I mean? Like, here's a little more. Okay, 10,000 more. But after that, I'm shutting you down because, this is really hurting me to have to be this nice to you. Like, that's how I actually felt throughout the day. Like, God, I'm not perfect, right? I'm still working through this faith thing. I know there's some things that I'm still working on, and I'm not perfect yet. So I probably shouldn't bless me too much because, if you want to strike me dead, pillar of salt, whatever, because and I would never think about that with my own son. And Jesus said this, like, listen, if you would never give your kid a snake or a stone as a gift, like as evil as you are as human beings, how much more will your heavenly Father bless you? And does he take joy in that? So whatever you're looking to trust God with, I just want to encourage you to believe in the goodness and the love of your Father. If you're excited about something that's moving you towards him, if you're excited about something that's moving his kingdom forward, he is 100 times more excited about it than you, and he is working for your good. I say it every single episode, and I mean it, and I have to keep preaching it to myself to even believe it yesterday. Hey, Daron, God is for you, not against you. He's for you, and he's actually moving the resources of the entire universe in your favor. This didn't happen because somehow I'm special. I think yesterday happened because we as a team have stayed faithful to move in the direction that God is nudging us towards. And that can be the same for you. Believe 10 times more than you do and ask God to help you in your unbelief about how much God loves you and how much he's for you. Oh, man. Last thought I want to hit you with this is in this process to move towards your 100th, whatever it is, you got to become who you were born to be. I know you're like, Daron, really? That's going to be the last point of this podcast. Like, don't you get tired of saying that phrase? No, I don't. I don't get tired of saying that phrase because it's wrapped up in everything I've already said today, right? The goodness and the faithfulness of God being for you, the fact that he created you on purpose and for a purpose. Like you didn't accidentally show up here on planet Earth. Well, we missed that one. I was focusing on all the babies in India. Oh, one over here in Texas showed up. Anybody know what this one's purpose is? Oh, no. Like, no, it's mind-blowing to think that the God of the universe, he knows your name, that he planned out your steps, that he knows the number of the hairs on your head. Like when you think about how good and how for you he is, the most humble thing you could ever do, the most responsible thing you could ever do, the funnest thing you could ever do is become who you were born to be. Because if you're pursuing trying to be someone else, you're doing a bad impersonation of yourself, you will not have the perseverance, the fortitude to stay faithful to get to the 100th episode of whatever this goal and whatever this dream you have. You won't have the ability to suffer through it because you won't be passionate about it. But if you are dedicated to staying faithful and following God to become who He created you to be, there's going to be good days ahead. Really good days. And if you have not started that process yet, please go to spiritualdna.me and go take the online course. Begin your process of understanding who I am in God's kingdom and what that looks like in my leadership voice and calling. Understanding why. Why do I do what I do? What are the fears and things motivating me that when I can allow those to be redeemed by God, I can have my motivations actually working for me, not against me? To be able to answer the question, what do I do better than 33 million other people? How has my brain actually been hardwired together to give me the ability to perform practically perfectly in certain tasks, abilities, and strengths? To be able to answer the question, I know where I want to serve to make the greatest impact in life. If you don't know the answers to those questions, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know why you do what you do, if you don't know what you do better than 33 million other people, you don't know where you want to make the greatest impact in the world, if you can't answer those 4 questions, you're not on the path to becoming who you're born to be. And let's not waste another day. Let's start with day 1. And that may be where it is for you. Day 1, go to spiritualdna.me, purchase the online course, and start the process of discovering that. And then, when you get to day 100 of walking in this path of discovering who you were born to be, reach out to me, share the story with me, because I want to see how God has shown up time and time again and showed you that He's been near you the whole time. He's been for you the whole time. And He actually did create you on purpose and for a purpose. That's it, y'all. That's episode 100. And we'll be back next week as we get back into the next chapter of the deep dive of the book. And would love to hear from you. Please, please, please reach out to me. Here's the number you can text me, 317-550-5070. Send me a text. Would love to help you in this process. If you have questions, you can always email me, Daron@blackbirdmission.com. And if you don't follow me over on the socials, I'm out there. Just search my name. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, and it's on TikTok and Twitter. Love to connect with you out in the virtual world. So appreciate you guys. Love you. Talk to you next time. And once again, for the 100th time, never forget, God's for you, not against you. He's near you, not far away. And He's created you on purpose and for a purpose. See you guys next time.